I think it's been one of the keys to my successes. And it's one of the things that I've spent a lot of time training folks that have been working for me in various roles. And it's basically stop talking.
Very good. Yes.
Because in that absence of information, in silence, that allows your client or your partner or your cohort or whoever you're working with, gives people some breathing room to think about what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
if you're talking, you're not listening.
And welcome to Strategic Edge, a podcast by leaders and for leaders. We're here to inform, instruct, and inspire leaders. We're going to share information about business models, about theories, but then we're also going to provide instructions. How do you apply those? How do you make them very practical? And finally, we're going to encourage you to act. My name is Ted Davis. I'll be your podcast host and your leadership coach. I have been a practitioner, a student, and a teacher of leadership now for nearly 60 years. And as my future guests and I inform, instruct, and inspire you, I encourage you to do three things. First of all, absorb what we share with you. Make it your own. Take it on. Take notes. Make it your own thoughts. Make it part of what you now believe about leadership. Number two, reflect on it. What does it mean to you? What do we affirm that you're already doing? What ideas do you pick up about how to improve? And then thirdly, we want you to commit. Commit to an action plan so you can continue to move forward. So we want you to absorb, reflect, and commit. And with that, let's start today's podcast. Well, I am absolutely thrilled to have a marketing guru join me today. And we're going to talk about one of the serious business functions and about marketing communications and so forth. And my guest is James Hipkin. He is a 40-year career guru. Has worked at all ends, high-end marketing and sales. He's had a global experience. So, James, why don't you take over the introduction and tell us about your global achievements in marketing?
Well, it's been a fun journey, I've got to tell you. We've covered 4 different countries on 3 different continents. And that's given us a lot of perspective and a lot of experience, and it's really informed a lot of how I think about marketing writ large, and then business leadership and business management and team management, and because I've had the opportunity of leading teams in multiple countries around the world, and that gives you a richer perspective on what works and what doesn't work.
Excellent. Okay. What were some of the countries that you've been to, and what kind of projects did you do in those countries?
Well, I started out in Canada. I was born in Eastern Ontario, and I was working at the Toronto office of a New York ad agency named Ted Bates. And Ted Bates needed somebody to go to South America to work with Pillsbury. Pillsbury was launching Green Giant canned vegetables in Latin America, and they needed somebody who understood consumer packaged goods marketing and could work with the client and act as the liaison between the Pillsbury marketing executives and the local agencies in South America. And being young and dumb, I stuck my hand in the air and said, "Oh, pick me." Now, coming from Canada, I didn't speak one word of Spanish, nor did I really have any understanding of the cultural differences between a city like Toronto, where everything runs on time, stuff works, buses show up when they're supposed to show up. People say they're going to do something, they actually do it, and then I got dumped into Latin America where none of that applies.
Good. So you got to be adventurous. Go forth and learn.
Absolutely. And then my newlywed wife, I was traveling a great deal, as you can imagine. South America's a really big place. And my newlywed wife informed me that if we wanted to have a family, it couldn't be done by fax. So after 3 years in Latin America and the project was winding up, I put my name in and got myself transferred to Madrid, Spain.
What? That's a big jump.
Oh yeah, and that was a wonderful experience. I wasn't traveling nearly so much, and the red wine is awesome. And we had 2 children in 17 months, so we figured the facts out and got all that sorted out. And we were 4 years in Madrid. My primary assignment was working with Rover Cars. They were building a pan-European database marketing system. And, at the time, of course, I knew nothing about databases or database marketing or any of that. But the way my boss at the time said, well, you're smart, you speak English, the client likes you. So off you go. And, and then from there, I got transferred to the head office in Chicago. And in Chicago, I was 10 years in one of the executive vice presidents in the agency in Chicago. And we, had a number of large clients. British Airways was one of my clients at the time. I did some small projects with Cadillac and with Audi. And I also spent 5 years working very, very closely with Sprint. Sprint was my anchor client during that era. And at that point, I had a team in the neighborhood of 150 people, that sort of range. So it was a big agency, big team, big clients, big budgets, and, a really valuable experience.
So as you're traveling around the world, spending at least 3 years in these places, different consumer markets, different products and so forth, how did you acquire a solid foundation of understanding the principles of marketing with that kind of a diverse career track?
Well, I'll tell you, when you're trying to explain something like marketing in a language you're not comfortable with to people who don't have the same cultural background as you do, you really have to learn how to distill things down to their principles.
Very good.
And when you distill things down to their principles are universal. Principles are easy to understand. They're no less important or powerful for being easy to understand. Mm-hmm. But you have to speak in terms of the underlying foundational principles behind an idea. Then the local folks can take those principles and they can execute in a way that's appropriate for their market. Mm-hmm. Because, these markets are different, but different doesn't mean right or wrong. It just means different. And equally, the fundamentals, the principles that are underlying a lot of effective marketing are universal.
Well, in that, how did you learn to distinguish, here's a rock solid principle that's going to be applied regardless of the market, regardless of the platform? This is a consistent truism, if you will, for marketing communications, versus the next great cliche, as somebody says. They have a little success. They think they had one good idea. They think it's a principle, but come to find out, it was just a local thing. So how did you learn how to distinguish those?
I wish I could give you a magic formula. I really don't have one. A lot of it's just to be successful in marketing and in business, I think you need a lot of humility.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And, I'll be honest with you. When I went to South America, I was, way more arrogant than my education and experience should have provided. And that got beat out of me pretty quickly.
I laugh because that described me at that same age.
Yeah. But I learned that the marketplace will quickly tell you what's a principle and what's just an executional idea. You have to be paying attention, and you have to have the humility to accept that, your idea is not the be all and end all.
Mhm.
And also another thing I learned, and I learned this oddly enough from a factory manager at Warner Lambert in Canada when I was still in Toronto. He talked to me. I asked him, and we were doing a factory tour, and I asked him, so what happens if something breaks? And he told me, I didn't know it was the Toyota principle at the time. I discovered that later, but he told me about the 5 whys
Mm.
and how you need to ask why it broke 5 times to really get to the real reason it broke. And that, that was another lesson that I picked up and I spent a lot of time, I never take the first answer that I'm given.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
ask why. Just keep digging and digging and digging. Because when you dig down underneath things and you start, why did this break? Well, that part was bad. Why was the part bad? Well, the part was bad because I don't know why the part was bad. Maybe they sent us a bad part from the factory, and you start digging and digging and digging until you finally get down to the bottom of whatever it was that was the real root cause. Those root cause things are principles.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more about digging that deeply and patiently asking, as you say, the 5 whys. I love the idea of the first report is not fully accurate. I spent 22 years active duty as an Army officer, and that was a absolute, as you say, principle that we live by, is knowing that the first report you get on a situation is not the full story.
Right.
You've got to hear 2 or 3 stories. And unfortunately, I think in the world today, I mean, I see that on the news. My God, there's a tragedy, and if we don't have the full answer in 2 minutes, I think the media makes it sound like, all those who are going to investigate research, they're not doing their job because they don't have the right answer. Number one, until much later after I can do an investigation. And I think the other thing I see, I'd love to hear your comments, is that, the absence of information, the
Right.
absence of communications invites speculation,
Right.
and people will not speculate in your favor.
Right. And that's an interesting thing. I have a kind of a flip on that I've spent that I think's been one of the keys to my successes, and it's one of the things that I've spent a lot of time training folks that have been working for me in various roles. And it's basically stop talking,
Very good. Yes.
because in that absence of information, in silence, that allows your client or your partner or your cohort or whoever you're working with, gives people some breathing room to think about what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And if you're talking, you're not listening. You're not listening with your ears and you're not listening with your eyes. And that discipline of being able to enjoy and appreciate silence and not be frightened by it is, I think, an important skill to have. That, when you're working with folks on your team, you ask them, how's it going? And it's like asking the kids in high school, how was school today? Okay. Right?
Yeah.
But then you need to dig a little bit more and ask another question and then shut up.
Yeah, you can't get it all out in one. Sometimes it's not in one conversation. It's a series of conversations to get all the information out. And a wise leader figures out what's the tolerable timeline to do all that. And so, as you were developing your career and going around the globe, you've had a lot of leadership positions. I know you were the head of a marketing company based in San Francisco years ago. We talked about this before the show, that you don't have a specific name to put on your leadership philosophy, but what are some of the things that you picked up along the way? Said this is the essence of being a leader. What has been your guidepost?
Well, one of my guideposts that I've picked up by watching others. I've had some great bosses. And one of the things that was common amongst all of the great bosses and great leaders that I've worked with and worked for is they treat everybody the same.
Mm.
They show respect to the receptionist, to the office cleaning staff, to the CEO, to the clients. They show respect to everybody.
Excellent.
And that is a really important thing that I have found that really differentiates people who are successful in the long haul versus people who, move up the ladder quickly and then burn out or flame out. Those folks who recognize that they can't do things by themselves. And another thing, I call it creating vacuums. I always worked very hard, consciously, to create vacuums above people so that they had space to grow.
Okay.
So that they had room to expand and honestly room to make mistakes.
Never heard it expressed that way. Vacuum. Love it. Yeah, but I like that. But you basically you raised the lid and gave them room to, as you said, make mistakes, learn
And expand.
grow, and expand their thinking, because as a coach, you cannot. I mean, as a leader, as a supervisor, you cannot pour everything into them.
Right.
There's a certain amount. I have no idea what the percentage is, but there's a certain amount that we only can learn by doing it ourselves.
Right.
We may find out that, hey, there is an eternal truth here. I didn't realize it, but by my experience, it's the same truth my parents knew, my great-grandparents knew, and so forth. But there's some things you just got to learn, I think, even as a leader. And I think you just struck on one of them, of treating everyone, and I really emphasize everyone, with respect. If you're truly going to have a powerful impact, you got to treat them with respect.
I tell you, one of the things I used to do when I was hiring people, in the advertising agency world, because there's a lot of big personalities in advertising, right? If I had two candidates that were pretty much, pretty close, I would go out and I would ask the receptionist, how did they treat you? And I'll tell you that usually what gave me the tiebreaker.
Oh, absolutely. I had an experience like that with a receptionist. It wasn't quite the same question, but as I stood there at the office, I was going to meet the CEO for the very first time. And as I'm waiting, I noticed on their countertop, their receptionist countertop, in lucid frames, that their mission and vision and so forth. Well, this one was by far the best I'd ever read it. That it was very, very uplifting. Their values, their mission. I mean, it was obvious this was done well. And so I asked the receptionist, and I said, "Who wrote this stuff?" And she lit up like a Christmas tree. She was just so enthusiastic. She couldn't put a more passion into the we worked on that together. And she was just so proud.
Yeah.
I don't know if she ever had a part of the conversation or what she ever said, but the mere fact that she participated in that exercise, that she identified with that product and personalized it, as well as having a corporate identity. So I think you're right of just giving people that opportunity.
Yeah. A key to leadership is learning how to let others follow.
Well, very good. I like that. Let others learn how to follow, right? You said follow.
No, the leader needs to learn how to let others follow.
Follow, right.
As opposed to constantly directing.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. I haven't heard it expressed that way. But that's very good. I hope our listeners will write that down. I'll make sure we put it in the graphic. That's a good saying. Excellent. So you've had this rich experience for over 40 years. You learned these marketing principles, and you were doing this stuff When it was just public relations, it was print media and television, radio platforms. But now you're in the digital age and you are wildly successful. As it says on your site, you help six-figure business owners go to seven figures, and it's just simply by digital marketing. So how did you learn to take that and move it to the digital era?
Well, the thing we talked about before, marketing at its fundamentals is there's a handful of principles that matter. And one of the key principles that matters to successful marketing is I saw most small business marketers are inside out. They stand on the top of their building and they shout at the world at large about how awesome they are. Okay? That's not going to work.
No, not at all.
What you need to do, the principle that is an underlying principle in all forms of marketing, regardless of whether it's digital or traditional or whatever, this principle still applies. And that's what outside in. Understand who your customers, your best customers are.
Yep.
Understand how they think. Understand the challenges and pain that they're trying to figure out. And then share with them how you can help them. That's outside in marketing.
Very good.
And in the online world, I'll give you an example. I will often be in a situation where I'm in a conversation with a small business owner, and I will ask them, so what's the primary objective of your website? And I will get a litany of things that they want the website to do. And then we'll have a quick conversation about the definition of the word primary. There can only be one.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
And then usually they end up landing on conversion. Now, a smart marketer's a lot like a smart lawyer. They never ask a question they don't already know the answer to.
Right, absolutely.
And the reality is when they're saying it's conversion, they're almost always wrong, because conversion is an inside-out metric.
Mm-hmm.
The primary objective of a website is confirmation.
Well, I never heard it expressed that way.
When the consumer is on their journey and they land on your website, they're looking for confirmation that you, A, understand their problem, B, are a credible provider of a solution, and C, have a solution that makes sense to them. But it's in that order. So conversion is still part of the mix. But if you like, another thing I'll talk about is another example of this. I like to stand in front of a room full of marketers and say, it's a bit controversial, but I'll say, I want you to stop saying call to action.
Wow.
And people do exactly what you just did. Their eyebrows go up and they're like, wait, what? I've been told my entire career I have to have a call to action.
Yep.
Okay.
So I was just having that conversation earlier today. That's why whoa, wait a minute. I just had that conversation today about a call for action. Yeah.
Right. Well, but think about it. Inside out versus outside in. A call to action is a marketer shouting at a customer and telling them what to do.
Mm-hmm.
People don't want to be shouted at, and they don't want to be told what to do. What I recommend is you start creating people like you pathways. Most businesses follow the Pareto Principle. 80% of their revenue is coming from 20% of their customers. The specific numbers are going to vary, but the concept is valid. If you understand who that 20% is, you understand what they're like demographically, what they're like, what are their characteristics, what are the problems that they're trying to solve in their words, from their perspective. Then you can create pathways that call out to them with headlines, with images, maybe a sentence or two that tease the benefits. And then there's a button down there that says learn more or click here or whatever it might say. And when they select that button, two very powerful things have happened. They've told you exactly who they are, and they've given you permission to give them more information.
Well, that's awesome.
And pathways and call to action, effectively exactly the same thing. But the mindset shift is really important. The mindset shift is moving from inside out, I'm standing on my rooftop shouting at people, to outside in. I am finding my best customers and I am supporting the journey that they are on.
So if I understand correctly, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to provide, the command prompt. They can push the button and set a schedule, whatever. It may do the same things, but it's how you approach it and describe it.
Exactly. Well, how you think about
There's a
it.
pathway. It's interesting you should say that. It brings to mind. I don't know if you ever looked at it. There's a guy by the name of Taylor. He used to teach at UMKC, I think, or University of Kansas. I'm sorry. His name was Taylor, and he developed a theory of hope, or hope theory. And at first, I kind of poo-pooed it. I didn't think it made any sense. But then after a couple of years, I finally was mature enough to go back and reread it. And the thing he suggested is that you have hope when you have a goal,
Mm-hmm.
you have a pathway, a way to get there, and agency. In other words, you can make a choice. There was those three things when those are present. So it sounds like that's what you're kind of giving people, is a sense of hope of what are you trying to accomplish? Here's a pathway,
Right.
and then you're going to choose. Are you going to click on it and make an appointment with me or whatever?
Right. Yeah. I mean, consumers are people. And they're coming at things like, well, one of the thing I've got the world's most boring PowerPoint slide. It's a white field with a big gray blob on it. And I use this slide to communicate the idea to marketers that this is the world from your consumer's perspective. The average consumer gets exposed to 600 to 10,000 marketing messages a day.
Right.
It's just noise.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand their journey and you're not creating marketing that's resonating with their journey, you're just making noise. And it can be very pretty noise. I mean, you've hired a digital marketing agency and they're making all these wonderful, and they're very clever and they're pretty and et cetera, et cetera. If there is no strategy, it's just pretty noise.
And speaking of pathways to find something good, is there a pathway where people can come and find some of your wisdom? I mean, are you offering courses or any place where you've gathered your wisdom in one place and people can find a way to tap into it?
Well, during the pandemic, when things were a little crazy and I had some time on my hands, I put some of my experience and knowledge and started writing a book. And that book became Journey to Success.
Excellent.
And it's written as a parable. It's about the story of John and his family, and they owned a custom bike shop. And what it's doing is it's reflecting a lot of the challenges and experiences and struggles that I work with my clients on. And I've written it in a story form so that it's business books are boring. It basically takes them from they're doing no digital marketing at all, and they're seeing more and more of their customers going to online shopping situations and et cetera. They decided they need to do something about this. And then all of their missteps and their mistakes and their triumphs and their whole process. And there's my alter ego is in there. His name is Kyle. And Kyle's a marketing consultant that they bring in who helps guide them on their journey to success. And it works on a couple of levels. I've just finished talking about pathways versus call to action. And one of the key pieces that's missing in a lot of marketing is, a marketer might have a customer avatar. That's a fairly common, reasonably well understood thing. But then I'll ask them, have you mapped the buyer's journey? And almost invariably they'll say no, or they don't know what it is. And mapping that buyer's journey is how you create marketing that is resonant with them when they first realize that they have a problem that needs to be solved.
That's
And then
excellent.
they go through consideration, they go into prospecting, and each of these layers in the funnel generate different questions, different obstacles to be overcome, and different levels of involvement. And if you've mapped that, you can start to craft your marketing and your content and your website and your social media, or whatever it might be. It's starting to be crafted against a strategic foundation. And
That's
that's
awesome.
how it stops being a big gray blob and starts being something that's supporting the customer's journey, which builds trust, it builds relationship. The goal here, the holy grail is you don't want to make a sale. You want the purchase to be the next logical step in their journey.
I love the way you put that. That's excellent. Do you see, because you talk about journey, which I absolutely love the metaphor. Do you see any comparison with, what's his name, Dennis Miller, with his storyboard model? He's got 7 steps in there. 7 parts.
I've been, other people have mentioned that to me. I have not read it. I've just been doing it.
Yeah. It sounds like it would be an interesting comparison to make. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to read your book now. I've already read his. So hold it up one more time so we can make sure everybody sees the image of it. Journey to Success, James Hipkin. Okay. And we'll provide, now is it available at?
It's available on Amazon.
Okay. We'll make sure we have a link and post podcast.
And if people want to chat with me, I love talking to people. I love, if use VIPchatwithjames.com.
Say it one more time. VIP
chatwithjames.com.
Spelled out WITH.
Yeah, VIP CHATWITH James.com. VIPchatwithjames.com. And you'll see my calendar booking link. That's a calendar booking link. And you can grab a few minutes on my calendar and we can talk about marketing. We can talk about business, leadership. I'm a wealth of useless information, and I
haven't heard anything useless today. I've not heard a single thing that was useless today. So I think there's probably a wonderful fountain of knowledge there. Well, unfortunately, running short on time. One of the things I always like to ask that we leave the podcast with is sharing with our listeners 3 practical things they should do from our conversation today. So what might they be? What are 3 things you recommend people take action on as a result of listening to us today?
Understand who your best customers are.
Okay.
Pick up the phone and call them. Ask them about what they're looking for, what their journey is. Ask them about how they're approaching the marketplace, whatever it is you're doing. Get into a conversation with them. So understand who your best customers are, actually reach out and speak to them, and then build your marketing so that it supports the journey that your best customers are on.
So build your marketing so it supports your customer's journey.
Right.
That's excellent. Okay, so that's point number 2. And point number 3.
Point 1 is understand who your best customers are.
All right.
Point 2 is talk to them.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
And then point 3 is take that knowledge that you gain from talking to them and use that to build your marketing so that it supports their journey.
All right. So understand, talk or call, and then build. I love that.
Right.
3 action verbs. Understand, talk, and then build.
Mm-hmm.
That is marvelous. Okay. So again, it's VIPchatwithjames.com.
Yes.
And that's where people can go to schedule time with you and gain more things. But make sure you visit Amazon.com and buy that book, Journey to Success. First thing I'm going to do is finish the broadcast today. James, thank you so much. I hope we can get together again in a year or so after I have a few more guests, and we can have a follow-up, and we'll see where you're at on your journey and what's the next thing you want to share with people.
Ted, I'd welcome that opportunity. I've enjoyed our conversation and I would look forward to another one.
Thank you, my friend. You take care.
You bet.
Now we got 3 ideas of what to share from today's podcast. So again, what I'd like for you to be able to do is take those ideas, make them your own, reflect on them. What do they mean to you? And then thirdly, commit to an action plan. Commit to actions that you can take to apply what we've talked about today. If you want help, if you want some ideas, if you want some accountability, please contact me. Contact me by sending me a text, 913-306-1499. Put podcast follow-up in the text message, and I'll get back to you within 24 hours. Thank you so much for listening today, and I'll see you on our next broadcast.